Folks, welcome to the Future of Faith podcast. I'm Josh Packard, the co-founder of Future of Faith.
I'm Keedren Boston, ministry practitioner here at Future of Faith.
In each episode of this podcast, we're going to break down one key research finding from our brand new study about listening and faith formation. I'll give you the national perspective, trends and insights.
I take Josh's big fancy data and make it, useful. Spoiler alert. Not everything works, but I'll keep it real with how it actually plays out in ministry.
That's right. We believe listening isn't just a skill, it's a sacred tool.
So let's talk about what happens when listening leads the way.
This is the Future of Faith. Hey folks, welcome back to the Future of Faith podcast. I am Josh Packard, co-founder of Future of Faith.
I'm Keedren Boston. Oh.
Yeah. Keedren is our ministry practitioner here at Future of Faith. As you heard in the intro, Keedren brings the real life experience to a lot of this data and research that we're talking about. And today, what we want to get into is, we've been talking about this. We did this big study, right, Keedren? We surveyed thousands of Americans. It's nationally representative. We oversampled for teenagers, so that way we had extra data about teenagers just to talk about them specifically. You can see all this on our website, futureoffaith.org. But it's one thing to look at individual data points. What we wanted to do was kind of try and put all these together into some sort of framework or some way to make sense of, okay, what is it telling us in total? And so then we ended up with this kind of model about how should you listen? I mean, if we've determined that listening is critical for faith formation, what does it mean to actually sit and listen to someone? How do you convey to them what is in your heart that you value and respect and care for them? What signs and signals are they looking for to show that you really care? Then we came up with three things: relatability, reliability, and curiosity. Now, we're not going to get into all of those. I don't know. Keedren's got a favorite one where he's got to wait till the end to get to the experience. We're going to go through these one at a time in each of the next three episodes. And so, but at a very basic level, here's what we're talking about. Relatability is, I get you, right? We're just trying to make the other person know that I understand you. Reliability, you can count on me. It's just making sure the other person knows, they're not just shouting into a void, right? But I'm there, I'm hearing you. What you're saying is impacting my life, and we're going to come back around to this. And then, Keedren, your favorite, curiosity, which is that I value your story. And then I think by extension, I value you.
Right.
That's what curiosity does. So let's start off. Core idea behind relatability, I get you. What we see in the research is that relatability builds a bridge by communicating some kind of shared humanity. And essentially this idea of I can't judge you because, I'd be judged too, because I've done some of the same things, or I've done something very similar. I've had these same thoughts. I've had these same doubts or questions or fears.
Yeah.
It humanizes, especially in your case, Keedren, working with kids. I think it humanizes adults to kids. You don't that whole thing when you're a kid and you see your teacher from middle school out shopping in the grocery store, and you're like, hold on, that's not
right.
Teachers don't have real lives.
Right. You live at the school.
Right. But of course it's not true, but that's not how you think of it. I mean, that is the way I think kids so often think about the adults in their lives, is they're only there to do official adult things to me. And they've had no existence outside of their official role interacting with me. Right. And so this relatability idea, this, conveying very simply, I understand because I've been there too.
Yeah.
I think that could be really powerful.
I agree. And if I may, just take one step back, when you think of relatability, we don't want you all to think that, you have to relate to students by talking like them, by getting down right in that way. And think about it like this too. Not every student even relates to each other. There are students that we serve that have different life experiences, but they still relate to each other because they're real, right? So a lot of times relatability is just being real as well.
And don't make it up. I mean, I think one of the, if somebody's telling you about something, let's say a kid is telling you, or you're in a small group, an adult small group or something, in an adult Sunday school, and somebody's talking about substance abuse, and you've never used drugs or alcohol, don't tell them you have.
Right.
Please. You know, like being relatable doesn't mean to say that you've had the exact same experience or that you are like them. I mean, to your point, Keedren, with my own 15-year-old, I'll often like drop some brain rot slang like
Uh-huh.
right in the conversation, and I make sure that I use it correctly because that actually throws him off more. And
Right. Yeah.
like he's like, wait, what, dude? Like, then he gets so angry because he knows that I'm just messing with it.
Right. That's funny. But at least he knows that you're tapped in,
Yeah,
right?
that's all I'm trying to convey is like I'm paying attention to what you're paying. But
Right.
you're right, like I don't he's not looking for me to talk
Right.
like him or
Yeah.
watch the same YouTube that he watches.
Listen, and that hits different. Like that is the thing that says, no, that's what I like about Mr. So and so. That's what I like about Miss So and so. Because they're real. They're real with me. And that is a point that we can relate. So at the bottom, the foundation, relatability is just being real. And then there are going to be points and times that you struggle with certain things that maybe they're struggling with. Always say, we say it's okay to show your scars, right? But not your wounds. Like things that,
Oh,
you don't want to.
back up,
Okay,
baby.
yeah.
Say it again, say it again.
So it's okay to share your scars, not your wounds, right? Because wounds are, you're still dealing with them. They still may be bleeding, right? It's still sore there. A scar, it shows something that you've healed from, that you've overcome. And so even things that you do relate to them on, make sure that it's something that you have overcome and that God has brought you through, not just something that you're still dealing with.
Because you should have people for that. I mean, if you're in a leader
Sure.
position, I think this is a great point. Like if you're in a leadership position, you do want to be vulnerable. You do want to show those places, but we also don't need to be working it out in front of the people that we're we don't need to come across as perfect.
Right. That's key.
But not everybody gets behind the door. I mean, that's your own personal, thing that you're trying to work out with God and in your life. And some people, just like anybody else, there's some people you let into that process, and there's others that you don't. It's not. We're not calling for relatability. Doesn't mean full transparency in all things at all times.
Right. That's good. That's good. Yes, sir. I love that. And
So
I
it's
agree.
okay to show your scars, but not your
Not
wounds.
your wounds,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's important. That is
Well,
important. And we've experienced that in the past where we had to have those conversations to say, hey, if it's something you're still dealing with, keep that to yourself. Let's work that out,
yeah.
together. And
And I
let's
think
see where
like there have been times, that I've been in places where people have said, oh, tell me more about that, or I'd like to know more. And I've just said, now's not the time. Like I got some stuff to figure out. I think you can say that, even that's what I've said as a leader when I've been in charge of things. When I've said, it's not that I don't want to talk to you about this. It's that I'm not sure how I feel about this just yet.
Yeah, that's a really great response.
I think that's just like,
Yeah.
oh man, dude, one of the things that frustrates me most about generational research is, they'll say, well, you know what millennials want? They want authenticity. And then they're like, you know what Gen Z wants? They want authenticity. And they'll say, you know what Gen Alpha wants? Everybody wants authenticity.
Everybody does. Yes. Oh my goodness. There are things that every generation needs that's the same across the
Yeah.
board. Everything that, there are things that we all struggle with, that across the board, and that's where that relatability. So if we can find those things, um, that's gold right there, especially when it comes to walking with each other and growing with each other. Uh,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good.
Well, let's get into a little bit of the data around this point of relatability. So one of the ways that we come to this is like, okay, so when you're sitting and listening, how do you convey to the person that you're across the table from, or metaphorically across the table from? You care deep in your heart about that person. You want to make sure that they know that you care about them. So it can't just be like, I care about them and I'm doing this thing the way that I want it to be done, so they must know. It's like you have to align yourself in a way that makes the person who's talking feel heard.
I agree.
And on the reliability front, the one of the biggest barriers there to being I'm not reliable to relatability, to being one of the biggest barriers to being relatable is judgment. Right? When a person feels judged, the data are very clear here that like nothing shuts down a conversation and puts up a barrier faster than feeling like, sometimes with ideas that they're just working out for the first time, that you're sitting there in judgment of it. 81% of adults 75% of teens said that when someone listens to them without judgment, they feel more connected to them. And about 70% of them said that when they fear being judged, it's one of the biggest barriers to sharing. Or that they just stop even bringing themselves, to the situation in any kind of real fundamental way. And I think that's what we want, right? Like we want to give people, that's part of what it means to create a safe space. And it's like you're trying to create a space where people don't just think that you're sitting there waiting for them to screw up so you can correct them.
Right. Yeah. Shame. Nobody wants to feel shame.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wants to feel shame. Right.
And I think that's what that portion is. Like, I feel ashamed when I speak and somebody is judging me. I already feel the guilt. Right.
Yeah.
And if I come to a point where I'm sharing something and I have a vulnerable moment, that means that I'm convicted to some extent. And I want to work it out, like you were saying, like working these things out as we're sharing, and so it's definitely important, as a listener, to know that it's okay to have compassion without condoning. Like you can still have compassion without condoning what's being said, right? And sometimes if you don't know what to say or you feel like you're going to go to judgment right in that moment, then you need to pause. You need to pause, right? I'm in that too. Like I need to pause. Like if I feel like, pray. Like, what do I need to say? But sometimes we just need to listen and soak it up and then allow God to speak through us in those times, or at least let them get it out because it's something that they're evidently struggling with and may not even want to be in themselves in that moment, but they trust you enough to share that vulnerability and the thing that they're struggling with. And that's a big deal.
It's such a weird thing where it's like, a lot of times people are talking because they want to be heard and they need to work something out. They don't need anything from you. Like they just need you to nod along and say, man, I totally get that. Like that is enough. Kevin was giving us some, in one of our interviews, he was giving very practical advice. It's like, if somebody can simply say, oh, so that's why you did X, or oh, so this is what I hear you saying, like some very concrete phrases, like that's enough, right? And the weird thing about it is that, like, I don't think that, like, no, I guess some people do, but most people don't find as much value in talking when there's nobody else in the room. But just because you're in the room doesn't mean they want you to like tell them a whole bunch of stuff.
That's true.
Like it takes a little bit to be relatable and to do that. But I get it. To do that without judgment is really hard. It's when you hear about somebody doing something in that way, it can be, when you hear about somebody who's doing something that feels like it needs correction, or if you're worried that just sitting there and not saying something will sound like you're condoning it, I always think about it this way: is like, you can talk in that moment and you can say the thing, right? And it will help you go to bed at night and feel better. You can say, well, I told them the truth.
Right.
Like I said the thing that needed to be said. But I just don't think as ministry professionals, I don't think we're called to go to bed feeling good.
Man.
Like,
man,
the burden that we get to take from others and let them go to bed feeling good.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to be a longer process. The Holy Spirit is at work. It may require some patience, and you may not ever see the results of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to make for some sleepless nights.
I believe that. No, I've experienced that.
Sure you have.
Yeah. Like, that's why discernment is key, right? Because there are going to be some times where it is time to speak, where it is time to say something in that moment in a wise manner that is not condemning, but that speaks life, that encourages in that way. But the hard part of always wanting to feel like I have to say something in those moments, what makes it hard is you really want to help.
Yes. It does come from this genuine place of like, man,
yeah,
I know what would make actually, and I don't think you're wrong about this. I know it would make your life better.
Yes. But that comes with listening and then asking more questions.
Yeah.
Follow up. What have you thought about that? Listening to what you're saying now, that sounds hard. What are you thinking now? Like, you're bringing this to me. I appreciate you for sharing this with me. What do you think you need to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And then
right?
so Tony, 41-year-old, told us in an interview, another one of these very practical things. He says, all you have to say is like, oh, I understand. I've been there before. He said, that's all you got to say. You don't have to go into a half-hour story about how something similar happened to you, because sometimes you feel the need to rant. He says, you don't necessarily need anyone to compare anything with your experience of that moment. You just need to know that you're not alone.
Oh, that's so good, man. Because, Josh, it's easy for us to take someone else's story, like they're sharing with us, when we're not actively listening, we're thinking about, okay, can I really to share this? And then next thing you know, we share, we blur out all this stuff, and now we take our situation and we run with that, and they're sitting there like Kevin, right? Kevin's
yeah. Okay.
Now Kevin's relating. I understand. So now Kevin is the one saying, so this is what I hear, This wasn't me listening to him. Anyway.
Imagine going into your therapist's office and he's laying down on the couch.
Oh, man. Yeah. But we know that we want to help, you know what I mean? So that's the hard part. Like, but listening is helping.
Listening is helping.
It really is. And discernment is key, and we can discern better when we listen. And then we're listening, and God, Lord, I need you to speak to me too in this moment. Do I need to be quiet? Do I need to listen longer? So yeah, this is good. This is good. And I love hearing real stories too, man. This is perfect.
Yeah. And one of the things we keep circling back around to in all these episodes is that this is not replacing what has been happening in ministry for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Instead, it's expanding. It's giving you another tool here. You're right. Sometimes you're going to discern, and clearly what that person needs is like, like there is a book that I have read, or there is a Bible passage that I think you might just, maybe you don't do it right then. Maybe you text it to them later. It's like, it's something that I thought about. And then sometimes you'll discern and realize like, no, patience is the thing here. Like, I'm just going to keep being an open ear. It's not replacing these, other ministry approaches. It's giving us one more asset to work with.
Yeah. That's
very closely related to this. Relatability, of course, is reliability. And we're going to move into that one in the next episode. But this core concept of relatability, just be you, right? Like, as long as you are genuinely interested in somebody's story, then you're going to be okay. If you're not, maybe we've got a different issue. But you don't have to pretend to be something. You don't have to try and like relate to them through language or clothing or any of those kinds of things, or music or whatever. But if you can relate to situations, even just affirm that they're not alone.
That's so good. That's so good. Learn the language, but you don't always have to use it, right? Learn what they're saying. Learn the lingo, but you don't always have to use it, Yes. It's a form of communication. So, but that's so good. That's good.
Learn the language, even in a metaphorical sense, even if you're not always going to be the one using it. That's really great, Keedren. Okay, cool. That's all for this episode. We'll be back in the next one. We'll talk about reliability.
Thanks for listening. You have been listening to the Future of Faith podcast, produced by Future of Faith with original music by me, Keedren Boston. You can learn more about the Sacred Listening Study and all the amazing things going on in relational ministry at www.futureoffaith.org. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, where we feature incredible ministries, sacred listeners, and cutting-edge research, all for free, delivered right to your inbox. Thanks for listening. This is the Future of Faith.